on understanding the consumer from a very, very different perspective. For example, I had COVID for a month. My complete perspective of being a COVID survivor has changed, as have, you know, almost 9 million people in the world. That's a large population of consumers that have been affected by the pandemic of the virus, the physical element of it, the pandemic of the fear and the need for security, the pandemic of the social isolation through the quarantine, and the pandemic of economic insecurity. Those are really major factors in the way a customer even approaches a decision to eat at a restaurant, and if they wear a mask, and if they social distance. These are all elements which really need to be built in directly to a corporate decision-making about brand and about business model. And the last aspect of the purposeful brand is that this purpose has to be validated through action. At this point, this is almost, in many cases, like CSR, corporate social responsibility. They can advertise, they can good works, but are their products actually developing sustainable outcomes? Are they really earning the next level of trust for the company and the institution that they're dealing with? So I'd like to go to the next slide, because this is a very important transition. Excuse me. This is the transition from purpose to trust. This is impact driven, and this is where the leaders of the next generation of companies and the entrepreneurs are going to be in that space. I'm working with Legacy International on a project for global entrepreneurs to really address young entrepreneurs, to address the whole idea of how they're going to become entrepreneurs and create impact-driven projects which have a direct effect on the social development goals of the United Nations. So the evolution of a purposeful brand into a trusted brand is something that's proven and has to be earned. We all know that you have to earn trust from people. And that means living your purpose and your values without any gaps between what you say and what you do. It also means fulfilling the customer or the stakeholder experience. What is that experience that these customers or these stakeholders are getting? Is it what they expect? Is it what you promise you're going to do? Is the Subaru really promising and delivering a safe car and a family experience, which they advertise? Well, their sales have proven that that seems to be the case. Is the restaurant who's delivering an organic and a safe COVID kind of experience, proving it by the way they serve you food, the way they deal with your social distancing, the way they respect your space and your potential fear about that whole experience? The third aspect is, do you demonstrate the impact that you say you're going to demonstrate? Does Jahan demonstrate that she actually is benefiting the local people in the community who are producing crafts? Or is it just a good marketing line, which could be the CSR? And the evolution of the trusted brand is into a business and financial concept called creating shared value, where you're actually creating value for the community. And to create value, what do you have to do? You have to invest in something. You have to invest money, you have to invest resources in job training, in resource development, and you have to invest in the sustainability of your community and the planet and your stakeholders. So the evolution from a traditional brand, which is focusing on profit, to a purposeful brand, which many companies are coming now to realize that purpose is important to the growing market of next generation and women, and really across the entire board from Gen Z all the way to baby boomers. But how are they really proving and earning that trust? Which, remember, is in a lot of the world, it's less than 50% for major institutions. So we got a long road to climb to get back to 65 or hopefully 70%, which is emulated by Scandinavia, countries in New Zealand. So I'm going to pause for a second. Anybody have any questions at this point? Next slide, but I want to know if anybody any questions.
Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions. So Professor Kaufman explained over the last slide the journey from a traditional brand to a purposeful brand and then to a trusted brand. And he explained the key elements and aspects of it. Probably the question could be how can we do it practically? Those things look very nice, interesting, and inspiring. But how can we do this journey from one level to the next?
So I think that's what we're going to be discussing in the next point. But to go back to your question, the first transformation in brand is not to change your brand, but is to change yourself. The leader and the management team has to do some self-reflection upon who they are and who they want to become and how they want to appeal to their market. If they want to do it just as a company or a nonprofit, which is just focusing on the needs of their company, and they're deriving of profit or maybe extraordinary profits and maximizing those and the use of scarce resources to do that, or making decisions which are going to be reflective of the whole of the planet, and making decisions about the kind of ingredients that are in a product, the kind of packaging that goes into a product, the way a product is disposed of, the waste of a product. So the management team has to set the tone, has to set the mindset, and they're first committed to driving transformation, and the transformation has to be driven within their own entity. The second aspect is to develop a culture which is driven by why, by purpose. It's like remembering anything. If you try to remember what's of value to you, maybe it's your family, or so every time you go into a store and you're thinking about your family or your loved one, you think about what kind of gift you can buy for them, or what the needs of the family are. And in the case of a culture of a company or a nonprofit, you have to think of what is your purpose of your company. Is your purpose of company to deliver, say a food company, to deliver a product which is healthy, which is easy to use, which is nutritious, and will put the less impact on the environment? And how is it packaged? It's packaged in a place, in a product, in a packaging which is recyclable or doesn't create a lot of waste. This is decisions which have to be made by the team. So there has to be an agreement upon the culture and the mindset of the company before they even begin to develop a whole series of new strategies. So it's the leader that has to drive the element. It has to be the culture of the organization which have to implement and understand those values and that purpose and ingrain them as almost like a tool to remember and to use as a filter in every decision they're making. So, and then the third thing is to really understand where the world is and what their strategic plan is in addressing the elements that are transforming the world. Not only the digital technologies, but the different expectations of the younger generation, the Z generation, which is so based upon ethics and accountability and value, and the millennial generation, which is really looking at purpose and values and making decisions and willing to pay more for those things. And then looking at what's happening globally outside of our company and how to respond to that, and how do all of our stakeholders respond to that. The company and the culture of the company cannot just be oriented toward the one shareholder, the investor. It has to be listening. They call it radical or obsessive listening to all the stakeholders. And that's going to create a climate and a much more inclusive and interactive climate for decisions and implementation. So to me, Mr. Adil, that's the basis. That's the foundation of the transformation. It's the transformation of the leadership team, the transformation of the organization, and the incorporation of a vision of what's happening in the world, which is affecting that company. At that point, then we can go externally and develop our brand and our business model. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very good answer. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So if we're looking at trust as the driver, so we're going to get back to trust as we must say how trust is going to change our mind. It's going to create new value. So we have to understand what the intention is of the company culture and our leadership. So this is directly answering your question. How do we drive trust in our company, and how do we drive trust in the external environment through our brand and our business model? First of all, we have to set our intention, what we want to accomplish as our goal, and how do we incorporate that value in what we're doing. The second thing is when we get past the mind and the heart and the intention, we have to create a message which has verity, which is driven by values and belief, and something that we could stand behind, not just something we intend, but something that we want to live. It's how we deliver the computer, how Apple delivered the computer through crafting an excellent, highly designed, highly performance computer, which can be trusted. The third element of trust is who's communicating. Is the voice who's communicating, can it be trusted? Is it transparent? We experienced in the United States a massive protest over police reform and racial injustice. And there were many, many voices, but the predominant voice was a nonviolent voice of protesters of all different races and colors and ethnicities and ages who had the voice was for transformation and change. They actually used the word transformation, which is very uncommon. They usually use the word change, but they're actually saying they want something beyond change, which hasn't been replicated and it hasn't been proven, but they want a voice for transformation. But there was another voice that was happening there. There was the voice of looters who are the opportunists in the situation. In every transformation situation, you get people who seize on the opportunity and who are developing a more transactional approach to change, and the ones that are transparent and are really wholesomely and holistically behind the change, and their values are supporting them. And then what is the speed and the medium which this change is being transmitted? That's about the velocity. In the world, the velocity is very, very fast because of the digital work. And that's why I said the leadership and the business team really has to be keen on how to scale through media, through developing the different touch points and relationships through the digital media, and developing trust through your social media, and understanding the power of networks. Uber and Airbnb and so many other companies have participated in what's called the shared economy, where you're taking unutilized resources and sharing them through a middle entity, which is the digital network, and sharing them with people who need that. So in the case of Uber or Kareem, you have people, drivers, people who have time, people who have a car, and people want to earn some money. And you have another source of people who want to get picked up at their house. They want a very